Good people of a great nation, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Development Focus with Gidi Ojo, this midweek edition, the last one for the month of January. And with me on the set this very good morning is no other than an academic juggernaut, Associate Professor of Political Sociology and the Dean of Student Affairs of the only university of the federal capital of Nigeria, which is University of Abuja. You are welcome, Professor Abubakar Umar Kari.
Thank you very much for having me, Ogajide.
You are the Oga, you are not the Oga. You are the Dean of Student Affairs, you are a Professor of Political Sociology, you are all over, you are in the media, one leg in the media, one leg in the academia. How did you cope? How do you cope with all of these demands on your time?
Well, I think that makes the two of us. We are just talking about you. You have been all over the place in the civil society, particularly the election realm. We are together there. You are always in the media. I think the life of a patriot, of a very serious person, shouldn't be just one direction.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There are several demands. What in sociology we call role set, a number of activities every day for an individual. You have to pander to the demands of society, to the demands of the family, here and there, and so on and so forth. So that's why we have to manage this kind of life. We have to satisfy all the segments of society.
Interesting. Now, this is January 2021. Education in the midst of COVID-19. How has it been for University of Abuja? Let's take it from there.
Well, it has not been easy, absolutely not easy, and not just for University of Abuja, but for the entire education system, particularly the tertiary education system. Even before the pandemic, you remember, we have been groaning under very excruciating conditions, so to say. The entire system has been in crisis, and the crisis is multidimensional. There is the gross underfunding, insufficient or obsolete facilities, students overpopulation, inadequate teachers, and so on and so forth. And on top of it all, the perennial strike by staff unions, including my own ASU. As a matter of fact, even before the lockdown was declared, ASU had embarked on strike. And even after the lockdown was
effected.
No, I mean after the lockdown, the strike continued. ASU only called off the strike about 3 weeks or a month ago.
Yeah, December 23rd.
Yeah,
actually.
So the effects, the rippling effect of the strike is still very much in place, particularly given the fact that we have not been paid. Some of our colleagues are being owed up to 9 months' salaries. I'm personally being owed about 6 months' salary plus all.
In spite of what we are told that your salaries have been paid up to date.
No. The government said you are going to pay the salaries by 31st December and the allowances, but the only thing that happened was that they paid 2 months' salary out of 7 months, and they did not even pay December salary. And this month comes to an end this week. We are not sure whether we are going to be paid. However, I just learned that the end academic allowance has hit our university account. So it will likely be shared between now and next week. But even that one has produced its own problem.
Yeah, with the non-academic staff and all that. But let's start from, there is a lot to chew in the education sector. This is development focus. I deliberately wanted us to focus on the development sectors of our country. And education is a pillar for development.
Exactly.
And I worry. Let's take it from what does it take to be a dean of student affairs? what is because I know in my university days we used to have DSA, dean of student affairs. You've been there 2 years now, 3?
Almost 2 years. I was appointed in June 2019.
So what does it? What's your daily routine as DSA, dean of student affairs?
Actually, some people jokingly call me the VC of students. Yes,
of course you are the VC of students.
Yeah, because the role of the dean of student, I think, is one of the most critical within the university or tertiary.
I knew how long it took me to get you on this.
Yes,
you know, we wanted to do it 3 weeks ago. You just couldn't make it.
You cannot believe that I was in office up to almost 8 p.m. yesterday.
Imagine.
And today I'm going to have about 4 meetings.
Imagine.
And if I go to my office now, the chances I will meet at least 10 students waiting. So everything concerning students, their welfare, the hostel, academics, sports, scholarship, everything is under the deanage of students. Wow. Anything that has that pertains to students, water, electricity, internet, everything. So there will be complaints and requests. Of course,
naturally, because we are under-resourced.
Yes, and complaints all over the place, and I have to solve it. So I see myself as a solution provider, as somebody who manages crisis all the time.
Crisis manager.
And the fact that a university or a polytechnic or college of education is in peace largely also the disposition, capacity, capability, and contact of the dean of student, who has to reach out to the student union government, who has to reach out to individual students, listens to them, solve their problem, serves as a bridge with other units of the university, the academic office, the VC's office, deans of faculties, head of departments, the bursary, everywhere.
In doing all of this, you still ended up being the winning the award as the researcher for University of Abuja for 2020. How did you get time to do research? Because the dean of students is enough responsibility that should have excluded you from even teaching in classrooms and doing research. How did you, I mean, tell me about that award and what it comes with it. I read on the internet you are managing a huge fund for the university for a couple of years, maybe 4 years, 3 and a half years. Yeah, so run us through very quickly, in brief what it means, that award, what does it mean to you, how did it come about, and where did you get the time to do this research?
Yes, I must confess that there was an element of luck in it. One of our senior organs in the civil society actually somehow was the one who gave me a hint in the month of May. And actually that time it was the period of lockdown. Talking of Dr. Kole Shetima, that there was this grant under the AHRS. Okay, that is it's an agency of the British government that funds such researches. So he advised me to go for the grant. I applied. They said I should do a proposal, which I quickly did. Probably because it was a period of lockdown. So I didn't have much problem. Yes,
distractions.
Yes, I was at home. We competed for it, many of us. I remember in Nigeria about 8 universities. It's a grant that cut across 5 countries.
Mozambique,
the Midland University in Zimbabwe, Makerere, Kenya, UNISA, South Africa, myself, and then University of Coventry. So I went through the interview 3 times. It was a very
competitive process.
A thorough thing, and I was now selected. What came to us is about £86,000.
Wow!
I had to hire 2 research assistants, And there is this PADIEB, an NGO that was formed by the late Tajuddin Abdurrahim. I'm working with them, with Tommy Olaniyan. We are the Nigerian component of the
components.
Thing. It is quite challenging. Okay, like yesterday, we had about 4-hour Zoom meeting.
Wow.
On that research grant. So it is one of the challenges that I will have to cope with. Because I'll have to come back. First and foremost, I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
I also teach.
Yeah, also dean of student affairs.
And I'm dean of students. So it is not easy.
And you're a member of the University Senate.
Governing Council.
Wow. It is congratulations. Hearty congratulations.
Thank you very
much. Now let's come back to the basics. Education sector. What's your overview of Nigerian education sector? And not tertiary now. Let's look at it from primary, secondary, and tertiary. What is your assessment, 2021 assessment of the state of the country's education?
Well, unfortunately, I will have to confess, that the story of Nigerian education system is not a very pleasant story. It's a story of inadequacies. It's a story of disruptions. It's a story of underfunding. And so on and so forth in all levels of education, right from basic or primary thing, particularly public education.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's in crisis. While the private people are gradually gaining ground, and their own is purely based on profit, and therefore it is quite expensive. If we go back to primary and basic education, for instance, you find this crisis of it being in the concurrent list.
Yeah.
And because of that, the federal government, the state government, and the local government, each of them is not living up to its own responsibilities. So there is a lot of confusion.
Are you saying there is still confusion with UBEC,
yes,
with TED Fund, all these interventionist agencies that I read somewhere, I don't know what the status is. I recall writing for my column in The Punch last year. I went on the website of UBEC and I saw a lot, billions of naira that are unclaimed by state government. What is responsible for that?
That's what I said. The tiers of government have not living up to their responsibilities. In most cases, it's about counterpart
funding. Yeah. Yes, that's for UBEC, but for TED Fund, you don't even need any counterpart funding. Yeah, there is a lot of unclaimed money in TED Fund.
Because actually, TED Fund is one of the shining examples of how to run a government agency. It operates strictly on the basis of procedures and rules. For you to benefit from TED Fund intervention as a university, a polytechnic, or college of education, you have to make submission, and your submission must be excellent, must be a fairly good one. So, unfortunately, some of those institutions cannot even make very, very good submissions that are...
Yeah, but because TED Fund, I recall Professor Bogoro, Professor Sulaiman Elias Bogoro was complaining about a couple of years ago that they have these huge funds for research grants that are unclaimed.
In my own university,
people cannot write good research grant proposal.
Yes.
It's that bad.
In fact, even before then, for instance, we at the University of Abuja, I think in 2017-18, about 200 million naira was allocated to us, and it was only when we had a new VC that we even found out that we were actually supposed to go and claim that.
Imagine 200 million.
So some of the university administrators are either indifferent or they don't even know. When Mahmoud Yakubu was years of TED Fund, there was a time that I represented the national president of ASU at a function. So I spoke on behalf of ASU. And the ears now called me aside and said, look, Harry, what are you talking about? You should be concerned about your university. Your university had about 2 billion naira with us. And this is November, and you people have not claimed it. So what are you talking about?
Imagine.
I now say, how come? He said, well, because your vice chancellor simply brought one piece of paper, which we turned down and said no. And I even told him that, look, Prof, if you want, we'll assist you with technical people who will put down this thing for us, but you have to do as required. So there is this problem of even living up to the rules and procedures of TEDFund. But TEDFund has done very, very well. If you go to every tertiary institution in Nigeria, Ogajide, at least 90% of capital projects.
It's by TEDFund. I see all over.
State governors.
I was in University of Maiduguri 2 weeks ago. I saw TEDFund projects over there.
90%.
Yeah.
In fact, it is what is even emboldening governors to
establish state universities.
Yeah, so
it's because of TEDFund.
All they need is just to pay salaries. TEDFund does every other thing. But we at the University of Abuja, I think in the last 1.5 years, we have to be extra grateful to TEDFund, particularly in 2020. Apart from the normal annual intervention, TEDFund set aside 5 billion naira for us.
Wow,
yes,
that's huge.
And an additional 1 billion naira because we were selected as one of the 6 centers of excellence. And our own focus is leadership and governance.
Now, that brings us to the issue of leadership and governance. That's very critical. Still, I mean, what have you to say about state governors who are short of funds, but have huge resources that is domiciled in UBEC, University Basic Education Commission? They have this matching grant. You bring, if you have 1 billion in with UBEC, bring another 1 billion counterpart. You can go and borrow this money, just bring it and claim your billion, and then you can you still see, if you go on the website of UBEC today, you might find that over 100 billion is unclaimed. Why is that so? Is it that the governors do not know, or the commissioners for education do not know, or the, I mean, I can't just make sense out of it.
To irresponsibility and misplaced priorities. Actually, education should be on top, or at least near the top of every serious government.
Exactly.
Because it's the bedrock of every other thing.
Every development, science and technology,
the foundation of
STEM, whatever you want to
do. But they are mostly really not interested. Because the monies, that they spend on servicing hangers on and thugs and party officials and so on and so forth, in most cases is much more than this counterpart funding. And it would have transformed basic education. Part of the crisis that we have in the tertiary education sector is because of the weakness of basic education. Yeah, because basic education has been churning out people who know next to nothing. And they are now being inflicted on us as undergraduates, people who cannot read and write. Yes, simply because public education has literally collapsed. And this is because of the sheer irresponsibility of state governors and their commissioners.
Now, the federal government of Nigeria last week came up with a report that they've reduced the out-of-school children from 13.5 million to about 6 million. What's your reaction to that? Did you read that story?
Yeah, I read the story, and I think...
should we applaud them for that?
For me, well, if it is true, but I think I took the story with a pinch of salt. I don't know how they came by that figure.
Yeah, because...
because I come from a state that at a certain point had the highest number of children who should be in school, but they're out of school. Bauchi, as at 2016, I think we achieved that notorious reputation. I'm not sure whether the trend has actually been reversed so spectacularly as been banded by government.
Because when I read
I have my own doubts.
When I had read that, they were talking of formal and informal, and then and I think we should be benchmarking out of school to formal education, not necessarily maybe Islamia or Quranic education.
I teach social statistics, and I know one of the easiest thing to do is to lie with statistics. Honestly, some people sit down somewhere and maybe engage in troubleshooting and some imaginative
because we need to confront this monster of where you have. I mean, let me ask you this, Prof. How has COVID-19 impacted on our education?
Very devastating, very, very devastating. In fact, I mentioned earlier on that even before the coming of COVID-19, the education system had largely been in crisis. So that crisis has now been compounded. And this is even more obvious in the university system. The university system, public university system in particular, has always suffered from overpopulation in students and inadequate infrastructure. I will be very, very specific. In our faculty, for instance, the Faculty of Social Science, University of Abuja, we are still operating from the mini campus in Gwagwalada. And the largest hall in our mini campus, the Emmanuel Abisoye Lecture Theatre, can contain only about 250 students. Political science student 400 level, they are up to 500.
Wow.
Yes. In my own department, sociology, there is no set that are less than 250. And some of these courses are combined courses. So now, COVID said we have to do social distancing.
So how do you achieve that?
So even at the permanent side, where we have bigger halls and so on and so forth, at the Faculty of Science, Department of Biological Science, they have almost 3,000 students. You see, and Faculty of Science is a service faculty because it services all the science-based courses in 100 and 200 level. Medicine, engineering, vet medicine, they all do courses at the Faculty of Science. So the problem we are now having is how do we cope with this? And you know, a university sometimes is busier than a marketplace. And then there is this requirement to abide by the COVID protocol. So it's a huge challenge.
But how have you responded? I know I've been in some discussions where people were praising the Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja for taking preemptive action and being proactive with the issue. Because there were concerns a couple of weeks ago about whether the reopening of school for January 18 was sacrosanct. And the NMA was saying, no, don't open schools. ASU was saying, the schools are not ready for academic classes. But somebody whispered to me and said, University of Abuja has tried to do kind of technological, infuse technology into its programmatic. Run us through that. Where are you? Have you even announced resumption for new session?
Yeah, let me start with the step that we have taken. Actually, we were very proactive. As late as August, the Vice Chancellor set up a committee called COVID Committee under the Deputy Provost of the College of Health Sciences, and all the relevant units are represented in that COVID Committee. The committee was given a wide range of responsibilities, but the most important thing is to come up with steps so that in the event of reopening the university, we will have minimal hiccups. So the committee since August has done a lot. Through the Department of Chemistry, we started producing our own sanitizers. The Faculty of Engineering fabricated some machines where these sanitizers and the hand washing stations can be whatever. We also produce our own custom made face masks. the VC then immediately again set up a committee under Professor Galadima to explore the possibility of virtual classroom. And by November, we achieved that. So much so that even while they were at home, at least 5,000 of our students were hooking up to this virtual classroom. We had problem because of the strike. It would have been more. So adjunct lecturers were appointed to be running some of these courses. And since the calling of the strike, our colleagues are being trained department by department, faculty by faculty on this virtual classroom. We have achieved almost 90% success, and since January 4th, individual lecturers have started teaching through the virtual classroom.
Okay.
So we are reopening the university on Monday, 1st of February, and the decision is that we will combine both physical and virtual classrooms. There are some departments that have very few students, particularly the entire College of Health Sciences, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. Some departments are in engineering. Even in my faculty, Department of Geography, they can actually run the physical classroom.
Yeah, without compromising public health.
Yes, so the bigger faculties, they are going to run
the virtual classes.
Yes, and the Vice Chancellor has done a lot because through TEDFund again, we have to thank TEDFund. They have been laying fiber optics. I think they are going to finish this week. We are also buying the data from Glow. It's going to be activated by Monday, and we had an agreement with Amazon. They have created a space for us in the cloud. So the thing is that internet connection and connectivity are going to be quite robust.
Seamless. Okay.
Yes, to facilitate this. Then we are going to allow students into hostel in phases using levels. And even before the COVID, actually, when I became the dean of students, I discovered that one of the major problems that we had was the problem of squatting. A room of 4 people,
you will take 10.
Yes, or even 15. And most of them were actually illegal squatters. So we digitized the entire system. I have been the sole administrator of the site. I'm the only person who can allocate room, hostel and bed space to a student. So we are going to strictly ensure compliance with that. We have also written to NCDC and they have accepted that they are coming to carry out tests, COVID tests, to our students who are in the hostel, because we discovered that it will be futile to test everybody. Most of our students, unfortunately, are off campus. If you test them today and they go out, they mix with students, it will make any sense. We have also established 2 isolation centers at the mini campus and the main campus. We have set up a monitoring committee comprising of members of the COVID committee, hall administrators, porters, security people, to be looking out for people who have, who show some
some symptoms.
Yes, and they will be easily treated. So we have taken a wide range of steps to ensure that at least reopening will be safe to an extent. But you know, this is a virus that you cannot totally say that.
Now, let's take it outside of University of Abuja. You've run us through your preparations for physical resumption. And I think it's commendable that at least the training for virtual classes have been ongoing, and you said 90% has been achieved. Now, let's look at, I still come back to the basic. you look at the public secondary schools, the issue of exam malpractices, the issue of low quality pupils and students coming to tertiary institutions. You alluded to it earlier on. How do we curb issues of exam malpractices, cheating, and this issue of sex for mark, payment for grades, all these sharp practices and malpractices within the academic sector? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, they are real. And I think if one has to apportion blame, I would say, for instance, we are all guilty. Parents, teachers, students, government, the system entirely. It is because of the crisis. If you really want to go very, very deep, it may start from the gross underfunding of the sector. It is as a result of the underfunding that we do not have adequate classroom. We do not have good teachers. And then there is this craze among parents that say their children must at all costs make it by hook or crook. I was exam officer for 8 years. I know the kind of pressure from parents whose children have failed the exam and they must pass at all costs. Parents sponsor mercenaries to write WAEC and JAMB for their children. Our own colleagues too are guilty, probably because they are not being well paid, even though that one is not an excuse. They collect money from students, they leak questions, they harass students, even sexual harassment.
Yeah.
In fact, we had to set up a committee last year under a female professor of chemistry to head the sexual harassment problem. And at least 2 lecturers were sacked, I think, in late 2019. And there are several other cases that have been investigated. The problem is so wide-ranging, is so pervasive, and is so, it's just like a vicious cycle. A particular thing feeding into the other. Lack of government funding plus desperation on the side of students and parents, plus lax administrative steps, greedy teachers, and so on. So this one feeding into this one. So it's a very serious problem.
As a sociologist, will you say it is time for parents to also wake up and smell the coffee, that free education is actually antithetical to quality education? Well, particularly in an environment like Nigeria, where we have not been able to meet the basic UNESCO funding benchmark of 26%, I think. So, do you think we should still be striving and protesting? I know you belong to ASU, you are in student union. Maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but the reality, I'm just saying the reality. If you send your wards and children to private universities and they are paying millions and they are having seamless academic sessions, although there is also arguments that maybe the lecturers, they don't face students. I don't know how to put that. But in public universities where people trust the system, that they have quality lecturers and all of that, and you having this issue of infrastructural deficit, you are having issue of poor funding, poor motivation of even staff and students. Don't you think it may be a good idea to make students or parents, in real sense, parents to pay a little more for the education of their wards and children?
Yeah, it's an ideological thing, but personally, I've been steadily abandoning that ideology. As you mentioned, ASU has a very strong position on this, also still believes that Nigeria is rich enough to fund education at all levels. I'm beginning to doubt that, even though I stoutly defended that position. But it is becoming increasingly untenable. Okay, that is on the one side. On the other side is the reality of poverty in Nigeria again. And then there is this problem of hypocrisy among Nigerians. In Nigeria, we don't want to admit that long-held positions are no longer realistic.
Realistic,
Yes, we still want to tenaciously hold on to certain positions that, as far as I'm concerned, are obsolete, should be done away with. And one of them is free education. We don't have to be charging exorbitant fees in our universities and polytechnics and colleges of education. But to say that it is only government
that
can fund education, I don't think it is tenable again. Because the hypocrisy is that most of us, we prefer our children to attend private primary and secondary schools.
Even universities.
Where we pay through their wealth. Let's even say fewer
because I know of lecturers who have their children in private universities.
Yes. And we pay a lot of money for our children to attend private primary and secondary
because
schools.
I dare say,
and we now campaign against the same thing
at the public university level.
What I'm canvassing for perhaps is a regulated regime of tuition. Yes, it doesn't have to be in the hundreds of thousands. No, it could
just be like 20% increase. That's something that will cost recovery.
Yes.
So basically,
I'll give you an example of the problems that we had. Our governing council, last year, look at the totality of the fees charged at the University of Abuja. Students were paying between 15,000 and maybe 25,000 per session. And at the same time, some departments and some lecturers were coercing students to pay for journals, to pay what they call faculty fees, department fees, handout is actually banned. Actually, unknown to most people, it is very, very difficult now to sell handouts everywhere. But there are substitutes for handouts in a way. Lecturers will go and do departmental journals and compel students to buy. It's not much different from the handout.
Of course.
Yeah, so this one is like organized, official and so on. So our council say no. Nobody but the university must charge any fees. We summon all deans and heads of department and say, look, what are your demands? We want every fee to be centralized. And then we now started charging, 3,000 for internet, 5,000 for electricity and water. Just at the Faculty of Social Science, rather than pay 18,000, our students now started paying between 25 and 27,000. And hell nearly broke loose.
From the student union government?
From everybody. Some people even went to the media and said we had double school fees, and it was an increase of between 5 and 15,000. But because of this, our hypocrisy.
Yes.
So, and this thing actually up our internally generated revenue so much, so that we have embarked on so many projects now. We are funding part of the payment to Glow. We are building a 500 million naira conference center. As we are entering our permanent site now, it is under construction. We are doing landscaping. We are doing, we did a lot of renovation for the hostel with that kind of money. But there was a lot of resistance. So you can imagine even if our students are being charged 50,000 as tuition, if it is well managed, because of the population of students in our public education, it will help a lot. But those who subscribe to ideology will say no. Parents will say they are too poor to pay this. And these are the same parents who are sponsoring their students into primary
Private primary and
school,
secondary school.
and are paying through the nose.
What is the situation with scholarships and student loans? Because yes, we need to do a balancing act.
Yes,
if I know for certain that many families may not be able to cope with even a 10% increase in tuition or whatever you want to charge, but if there are student loans and scholarships for indigent students, maybe that would be a buffer to enable the school to charge for services, because education is actually a service that you need to climb to any ladder of life you want to get to.
So the issue of student loan is a purely government thing, and I think this is an area where our staff unions, ASU, SANU, NASU, and even parents should put pressure on government to reintroduce this
student loan, bursary, and even scholarship.
2 days ago, a lady came from the Federal Scholarship Board. I think her name is Mrs. Pauline Ako. She brought scholarship for 37 of our students who didn't even know that these students went to write the exam and they passed.
Wow,
yes, and the money is quite substantial: 250,000 per annum for undergraduates, 300,000 for masters, and 380,000 for PhD.
Wow.
Yes, and if you pass that exam, they will be paying you this thing annually until the end of
you graduate.
So
that's the Federal Scholarship Board.
So I heard that what was happening before, that the whole thing is being kept secret. Okay, that there is this opportunity. Most people are not aware. In fact, I don't know how those people even heard about it and wrote the exam and passed. But at our own level, in October, I presented a memo before our management meeting where I proposed a kind of scholarship scheme which was approved. We are going to be charging our contractors about 1 or 2% of their earnings. I mean, if we give them a contract or supply, it may amount to 50,000, 100,000 here and there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it will be a lot of money. We are also going to reach out to some public spirited individuals. At least 2 have responded. I know former IG Smith is one of them. We are going to tell them that, look, we have a scholarship scheme under the Student Affairs. You can come and contribute and tell us who you want to give. We will just facilitate. We will just administer the scholarship. So we will talk to organizations, we will talk to individuals, and from our own, and we identified 3 categories of beneficiaries. The first, based on performance, our students who are doing very, very well in the respective departments. So it will be competitive. The second categories are indigent students, those who are clearly from very poor families who cannot pay. And then the third categories is as prescribed by the donor of that scholarship. It can be members of his constituency. It can be anything the person wants. So we are going to begin. We have set up a committee, and it comprises of student union, religious bodies, the student affairs, and then the representative of the alumni association.
Now
they want to administer this.
That brings me to the role of alumni associations. What role do you think they can play in helping their former schools?
Alumni association all over the world It will interest you to know that almost half of the funding of the big universities, okay, like Harvard, Oxford, and the rest, they actually come from the alumni association.
That's it. That's why I'm saying,
Yes.
well, how much of that
So,
do you
but
see
in Nigeria, I
Nigeria?
think we have not been
Tapping
utilized.
into that resource?
Yes, and it is high time that we
Because
started this.
I know that the University of Abuja has been around for over 20 years.
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years. So
Yes.
you have graduated quite a number of people.
We have
who
had
are
governors.
So
We have had at least 2 governors.
Imagine
Right now, we had 2 senators.
Imagine. So
And
if
one of them is a former deputy governor. This woman, I think, is Biodun Olujimi.
Biodun Olujimi,
yes,
yeah.
he had a BSc and MSc. We had 2 governors from Kogi State, the Red Law, Ibro and Wada. We have had about 5 senators. We have had bank MDs, the MD of Sterling Bank.
This is why I think it's a resource that you need to also tap into.
Yes.
My final question, because time is very much against us now, is about corruption in the academic in the academic environment. Auditor General report of 2017 actually indicted a number of vice chancellors for lack of accountability, particularly for the internally generated issue. And I think that is what also led the federal government to this issue of IPPIS, that you have to be on IPPIS because they want to checkmate fraud and all of that. So what's your quick response to that as we round up?
Well, I must admit that corruption exists within the education sector, just as exists everywhere, because of all sort of loopholes. And an IGR, of course, is a loophole. University administrators and rectors and provosts, they enjoy almost an exclusive privilege of dispensing or spending. And sometimes it comes as a result of a collaboration or connivance between the chief executive and the council or board. There is a lot of
what's the solution now to the blocking the loopholes?
The solution remains in compliance with the statutes. For instance, government is supposed to send a visitation every 4 years or every 5 years. In the past 10 years, there has been no visitation.
Thank you very much. We won't be able to go beyond that because of time constraint. Good people of a great nation is being, I've been having a chat with the Dean of Student Affairs and Associate Professor of Sociology, actually political sociology. I never knew until recently that he is not a political scientist fully, but we have adopted. It's an
there is no difference actually. If you look at the the content.
Professor Abubakar Umar Kari has been with me on this set today. He has touchlighted on several areas of education. I hope you enjoyed this session. Please, we solicit your advertisement on this segment of the program so that we can keep this program afloat. Thank you very much. See you around next week. It's a pleasure, Prof.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.